This is the BYD Sealion 6, which I think is one of the best plug-in hybrid SUVs on the market. And it's just been upgraded in Australia with new suspension and new pricing for the entry-level version. So let me tell you all about it in this review. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and ring that bell. And sorry about those cicadas, but let's get to it. BYD is assertive in the Australian market, and there's now an even more affordable version of the Sealion 6 available. Previously, they had dropped the price by $3,000 on the Dynamic. It's about to be scrapped in favour of the Essential model, which is cheaper again, $42,990 plus on-road costs for that new entry-level version. And it looks pretty much the same as this from the outside. You're still getting 19-inch alloy wheels, you're still getting LED lighting all around the car. You are missing out on front parking sensors and a surround view camera. And on the inside, it gets a smaller touchscreen media system as well. Fewer speakers for the sound system, but it still has Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, and sat-nav. It's got keyless entry, push-button start, fake leather trim with electric driver's seat adjustment. It's missing out on things like heated and cooled front seats though, which you do get in this high-grade version here, which is the Premium all-wheel drive. This model gets more power from its powertrain. It's got a turbo petrol engine as part of its plug-in hybrid system. It's got all-wheel drive, and it gets a few extra features on the inside, including those seats that I mentioned, a bigger touchscreen media system. Both versions come with a digital instrument cluster as well, and you can get this with a different interior color trim choice if you want to. That entry-level version and the standard trim is a black and brown finish, which you might love or you might not. And this high-grade version also has twin wireless phone chargers, which the base model misses out on. Now, I think this is an absolutely amazing value vehicle. There's now a big gap between that entry-level version and this top-spec one. So what alternatives could you consider? Let's talk about them now. If you're thinking that you want a plug-in hybrid vehicle, that's your priority. So you know that you'll drive EV as much as you can and then have a backup engine for those longer trips. Well, there's another BYD I reckon you should go and check out, the BYD Shark 6. So that's the dual cab ute. It's a 5-seater like this model. It's got a much more practical design because it's got a big tray and you can actually do some stuff with it if you need to. And it does have the ute appeal factor nailed. I really think that it's a brilliant choice. It's still less than $60,000, just a few $1,000 more than this top spec all-wheel drive version of the Sealion 6. And I think that the Shark 6 is an absolute corker. It's got better towing capacity, it's got decent payload, not as good as some of the other utes in the segment, but I still think that for someone who's thinking, well, I want to live part electric when it comes to my lifestyle, that could be a fantastic choice. If you are looking for an SUV, well, the Mitsubishi Outlander plug-in hybrid is still one of the best that you can get. It's just a bit too expensive by class standards these days. It tops out at almost $80,000 for the high-grade version to get comparable equipment as you get in this $50-something thousand BYD. So it doesn't necessarily make as much sense when it comes to the dollars and cents, but it's still a very good and practical family SUV. And hey, if you are thinking, well, maybe I should wait, there might be something better coming. Well, you might be right, because the Cupra Formentor is getting updated soon with 100 kilometers plus of EV driving range and a new look, and it's still one of the most fun and engaging plug-in hybrid SUVs to drive. So it might be worth waiting for. You'll find links in the description below for reviews of each of those models. And tell me what you think in the comments section below. If you're not thinking about a plug-in hybrid, what car would you buy? I'd love to hear from you. Nothing has changed when it comes to the appearance of the BYD Sealion 6, so it's still a more conservative option compared to some of the other SUVs in this segment, and that's okay. You might love that. I think it's a pretty attractive looking thing. Not my favorite looking SUV, but it's still nicely proportioned, and speaking of proportions, it's about 4.7 meters long, so similar in length to some of the other 7-seat SUVs in this segment, but it doesn't have that extra third row of practicality. It does have a relatively practical boot though. Let's have a look at the space on offer here. Again, apologies for those noisy cicadas or cicadas, however you say it. And in the boot, you'll see, yes, electric tailgate, plenty of space in here. You'll see the figure on your screen now. It's not as big a number as in some of the other SUVs in this segment, but it is pretty practical so long as you can move that bag out of the way. You've got a cargo cover here, which is good. There are no shopping bag hooks in the back though, so that might be something you want to consider. But there is a light, there's a little storage tray on the side there, and on this side you've got a speaker. And underneath the boot floor, let's have a little looky. Yep, no spare either. So you've got a tyre repair kit. That might be a deal breaker for some. I know there are plenty of you out there who think that all cars in Australia should come with a spare wheel, and I tend to agree, but it's just not the case at this point in time. So do you think that would be a deal breaker for you? Personally, I could understand if it might be, but this car has plenty of other positive attributes. Let's check out the interior and I'll show you some of them. Right, so nothing has changed in the interior of the BYD Sealion 6, and I'm okay with that because this is still an interesting cabin. Like, it's not going to be to all taste, there's no doubt about that, but I do like some of the finishes and the treatments in here and the technology as well. So let me show you why you might not love it. Okay, so the brown and orange trimmed leatherish seat finish, and that runs up onto the doors and onto the dashboard and over here as well. That isn't going to be to all tastes, there's no doubt about that, but there is a different color choice if you wish. You've also got ambient lighting here, which you can configure, and there's also this rotating 16-inch or so screen. It is a very big screen. You can have it in portrait mode if you want. I think it's a bit gimmicky after you get used to it to change it all that much, but some people will change it a lot because some people are different to me, obviously. You've got sat nav built into this car as well. I've got the headlights on, so it's on night mode. There we go, day mode. And there's a heap of different menus available on this screen. No physical buttons for most of the controls though, so keep that in mind. You do have some, I guess, static controls down below. So your temperature control, you can quickly adjust that there. Your fan control, you have to press the button and go into the screen to adjust the fan speed, which might be something that gets on your nerves if you're a fan fiddler. And then there's also these displays on the screen. So you've got menus upon menus, as is the way with a lot of these new cars. But this screen, I tend to get used to it really quickly every time I get back into a BYD, and I'm sure you'll be the same if you end up buying one of these cars, because it's not quite as overbearing as some of the other displays which I've come across. And yes, you do have a number of different menus available to you on the screen, so you can adjust things, you can tailor things to your preferences. And look, there's obviously vehicle settings in here which you can go into as well. You've got steering adjustments, so you can make it sport steering or comfortable steering. Comfortable's lighter. There's more assertive brake support, and you've also got in the energy section, you can adjust whether you want your regen braking to be super assertive or not. And there's a number of other energy settings on the screen here. So yeah, you can tailor a lot of things in this car to your preferences, including the ADAS system. So that's advanced driver assistance systems. And in this car, they're not that annoying. So thankfully you can switch things off and they will stay off. For instance, as you'll see on the driver info screen over here, I've turned off the speed sign warning system, and so it will stay off, which is really, really handy. And there are other ways of interacting with the controls in this vehicle. You can say, "Hi BYD, turn the temperature up to 27.
All right, the temperature is set to 27 degrees.
And as you can see, it will do that. And if you want to adjust the temperature on this screen, you can do that too. So you can use these controls on the steering wheel just by scrolling up and down using that button there. You can also adjust the fan speed doing the same. So using the toggle switches there, you can adjust how much fan speed or how much air you've got coming at you, which is great. I love the fact that you don't have to go over and touch the screen to do that. There's a number of other menus available to you on this driver info screen. You can set up timers. You can also keep an eye on the critical elements of the car, and you can adjust the display as well. So if you want it on a classic or a fashion, let's go to classic, and it changes things, as you can see. So look, I think that that is a pretty decent screen, and the controls, like I said, a lot of controls done through the steering wheel buttons, and that is good because they are pretty easy to get your head around. Cruise controls on this side, lane keeping as well, and your distance there. You've got a wipers stalk on this side, and your blinkers and headlights are on the right side, or the correct side as well. And let's have a look up here. You've got illuminated vanity mirrors, yep, the light up there. You've got auto dimming rear vision mirror. There's a sunglasses holder up high. You've got your controls for your big panoramic glass roof, so you can open the glass as well if you want to. And yeah, you've also got really smart things like dual wireless phone chargers. You've got your start button down here. Yes, as you can see, that is rather reflective, that shiny black finish. You've got a couple of other fan controls down here, so you can turn your fan off, and you can also put your demister on if you want to. And you've got your park button there, little tiny gear selector, and you can toggle here between EV and hybrid mode. You've got a volume dial scroller, a couple of cup holders, a decent sized center console bin here, and you've got a little glass smasher and seatbelt cutter for emergencies if you ever end up submerged. Hope you never do. There's also bottle holders in the doors, and yeah, the design, the finish, everything in here, the thoughtfulness, it's very, very livable compared to some of the other new models on the market. But let's check out the back seat and see what the space is like. This seat is set for my driving position at 182 centimeters tall, and you can see I've got plenty of knee room. Can't quite tuck my feet all the way under the seat in front, and my knees are in a bit of a knees up position, but it's not uncomfortable. And I would say that generally you'll be able to fit 3 adults across the back here because it's a flattish floor. And yes, I've even got plenty of headroom back here too. Despite the fact it's got that big glass roof, there is still inches above my head. So if you are a tall unit, you might be able to fit in here pretty comfortably, hopefully. You've also got these pull down grab handles. There's lights in the back too. So that's great for reading at night or helping you get your kiddo out if you need to. You've also got some really great amenities here. So you've got mat pockets on the seat backs. There are directional air vents, a couple of USB ports, an A and a C, a little storage cubby down there, another mat pocket, bottle holders in the doors, and you've got ISOFIX points in the window seats and 3 top tethers as well. A little flip down armrest here with some cup holders, which is great to see. And these seats can also recline back if you want to. So you can pull that little tab and lie them back, and you can see for yourself that yes, that would be a rather relaxed experience. You can also see that you've got your ambient light strip in the back, nice soft elbow pads on the doors, and all of that combined makes this a very comfortable backseat experience, and the seat itself is comfy too. So it's a good one. Definitely one of the best in the class in terms of the backseat amenities. BYD calls its plug-in hybrid systems DMI for dual mode intelligent, and it is a pretty smart powertrain, I have to say. Now the entry-level version, it's got a 1.5 litre non-turbo petrol engine paired up to a front-mounted electric motor and a single-speed transmission. It's front-wheel drive with 160 kilowatts and 300 newton meters, which is okay for the class, but it is almost 2,000 kilos, this SUV. 0 to 100, about 8.5 seconds. But this one here is the Premium with all-wheel drive. It's got a more powerful turbo petrol engine, and it also adds an electric motor at the rear axle as well. So it's all-wheel drive, 238 kilowatts, 550 newton meters. So it boogies 0 to 100 in 5.9 seconds, which is pretty quick, very quick in fact, and it's about 2.1 tons. And it can tow. There is a little bit of a difference between the 2 different models when it comes to towing capacity, which you'll see on your screen now. All right, let's talk about EV range and charging stuff. On the curbside of this car is where you will find your petrol filler. Yes, it needs 95 RON premium unleaded, so you need to keep that in mind. And on the driver's side is where you'll find your charging port. Now, if you're a street parker, that might be a problem. You need to keep that in mind, but it does have some seriously good charging capability here. So AC charging, as you would expect, and then there's DC charging as well. If you want to take advantage of that, you can at 18 kilowatts. It does also have vehicle to load at up to 10 amps. And let's talk about the battery capacities for these 2 different models. So the same battery, an 18.3 kilowatt hour LFP Blade battery, and the front wheel drive model has a stated 92 kilometers of EV driving range. The all-wheel drive version, this one here, a little less at 81 kilometers. But let's jump in the car and go for a drive, and I'll tell you what I've achieved when it comes to the EV driving range. Okay, so this is a plug-in hybrid, and if you're not aware of what the concept of a plug-in hybrid should mean, it is that you drive electric as often as possible, but then you've got petrol when you need it. So yes, it does have a petrol engine and a big battery pack, and the whole thing is designed so that you can basically do the commute fully electrically, emissions free, if you've got the capability to charge emissions free. And then if you need to go on a longer trip, well, you've got the petrol engine, which will act as a generator and help you power along, and it can run as a hybrid car as well. So petrol and battery pack working together to keep you moving. So it does have all of the smarts there to make this a very clever technical design to meet most people's needs. So even if you haven't thought of a plug-in hybrid vehicle in the past as an option for you, well, there's going to be more of them coming, and this is one of the best examples of the technology that I've driven because it is so livable and it does have heaps of EV driving range. Now, as I said earlier, you're talking more than 80 k's of claimed range for this all-wheel drive model, more than 90 for the front wheel drive one, and I've done tests in both of those models and achieved very, very close to that EV driving level in both instances across a mix of the sort of driving that you will do. So you can take those numbers with confidence. You will be able to do about 80 k's, 90 k's of EV driving in this car before the petrol engine kicks to life, and then you'll be able to still run pretty efficiently. I'll tell you some of the fuel consumption figures that you need to know in a sec, but generally the drive experience here is really promising. It's not necessarily thrilling in a lot of ways, but it does have a heap of power and torque with this all-wheel drive system, and it's got plenty of traction as well. So when you do put your foot down, it gets along really well. And there's a sport mode if you want to take advantage of that too, but honestly, I think that even in normal mode, it feels zippy enough for most people's needs because it's got electric propulsion and petrol engine power working together. It's actually far more refined and far more livable than some of the other regular hybrid models that you might consider. It's quiet as well, so you can run it as an EV and it will be relatively quiet in most situations, and that makes it even more appealing in my mind. So I have to say, the drive experience from the powertrain perspective, it gets a huge, massive thumbs up from me. It is really, really enjoyable and very easy to get to know as well. So you don't have to think about it. All you have to do is make sure you plug it in at night and make sure you've got fuel in the petrol tank, and you'll be able to travel a long way because it does have a heap of possible distance available to you. And more generally, the drive experience is even better now because there have been changes made to the suspension. So in the existing versions, which came in 2024, well, the suspension was quite spongy and soft, and it felt a bit wallowy on country roads. I criticized it for exactly that, and it sort of felt like it was always sort of porpoising nose to tail and sort of in a bit of a sine wave sort of moment. But with this updated version, which has revised suspension, which is far firmer and tuned for our conditions, according to BYD, it is definitely more, well, driver focused. I do think it has a less comfortable ride in some situations, but more generally, the driving character is improved. So it handles itself better. It doesn't feel as wobbly and bobbly over lumps and bumps. So it just feels like it's a bit more tied down. It's not too firm, and I like that about it. And generally, I think that it handles itself pretty well. The steering hasn't really changed, even though there has been a bit of a difference to the suspension. It's sort of still very light, and there's obviously a couple of modes that you can choose from in terms of the steering. But let's go through a couple of quicker corners here and see what it's like when it comes to the body control and that sort of thing. Yeah, the steering I wish was a bit more direct. I'm in the lighter mode, so that's typical, but the ride comfort, yeah, it's way better. It doesn't sort of have that pillowy feel to it that the previous one did in terms of the body control, just sort of not being quite as firm as some of the other rivals in this segment. The Giddy tyres are fine, I would say. They're fine, but when you get the chance to replace them, you might be able to put some better ones on. And one more thing about this drive experience that I just have to call out is that, well, the safety systems are not annoying. Like so many other new cars that have come out recently, really get on your nerves to live with in terms of the get in and just drive where you need to go factor. This car doesn't, because while it does have speed sign recognition and speed sign warning systems, well, you can turn them off and they'll stay off, so you don't have to turn them back off every time you drive the car. But you will have to turn off the emergency lane keeping every time you drive the car if you don't like it. But I have found that the lane keeping systems in this car are actually a bit more livable than most. So generally, the livability factor here, again, it's another big old thumbs up from me. On the whole, the drive experience here, it's great. I really quite like it. And it's made even better by the fact that, well, the efficiency is astounding. Let's talk about that now. So on your screen, you will see some official combined cycle fuel consumption figures for this plug-in hybrid model, and they are astounding numbers, like in the 1 litre per 100 range. And that's because that's for the first 100 Ks. It doesn't calculate out the next 100 Ks officially, but BYD does offer some expectations around what you should be able to achieve after you've depleted the battery down to its 25% limit, and then you'll be running it as a hybrid. You'll see the numbers for that on your screen now, and I have to say, that is pretty achievable. You should be able to see around 4.5 to 5 litres per 100 Ks. If you're a gentle driver and you're not in sport mode, then yeah, that is possible, I would say. In my testing over a week with this car, I've seen pretty close to that. In fact, just over 5 litres per 100 Ks, which is more efficient than what I saw in the last all-wheel drive RAV4 hybrid that I drove, and likewise a CRV hybrid. So I think if you are thinking hybrid is the answer to the question in your mind, well, maybe this plug-in hybrid is actually the right answer. And when it comes to the fuel tank capacity, you'll see that on your screen now. And also, as I said, it does need 95 RON premium unleaded, which might be something you want to keep in mind, but hey, you might be running it as an EV more than as a hybrid. I know I certainly would be. I'd be plugging it in and taking advantage of the range on offer here because it's achievable. As I said, it's really impressive, this car. Great to live with. The BYD Sealion 6 has a maximum 5-star ANCAP safety rating based on Euro NCAP 2023 testing, and it's got heaps and heaps of safety technology and equipment, and thankfully it's not as annoying as some of the other newcomers from China in this market segment. So you've got things like autonomous emergency braking with pedestrian, cyclist and junction detection. There's also adaptive cruise control with an advanced lane keeping system as well. There's emergency lane keep. It can be a little bit too pushy. There's speed sign recognition, but you can turn it off if you don't want it on and it will stay off, which is a nice plus. And you've also got things like front and rear cross traffic alert. There's also blind spot monitoring. A surround view camera is standard. Parking sensors are standard. And unlike some of those other new models, it doesn't have one of those really annoying driver monitoring camera systems. So you can just get on with the job of living with this car and it doesn't get on your nerves. And I like that about it. And it's got 7 airbags too. Dual front, front side, full length curtain, and also a front center airbag to prevent head clashes in the event of a T-bone. So I think it seems pretty good on the safety front. Very good, in fact. In Australia, BYD offers a 6-year, 150,000 kilometre warranty, which is okay, I would say, but you need to read some of the fine print and conditions around the warranty because there are some things that might be excluded. Now, the battery pack for this vehicle is covered by an 8-year warranty, which is on par with what else you get in other EVs out there. And you need to keep in mind about the service situation with this car. So it's not traditional in that sense. There are some service locations around the country, but they might not necessarily be BYD branded, but there is a decent network of service locations. And the service intervals are pretty generous as well. You see them on your screen now. Service costs, not too bad either. So you might be able to justify this car in a number of ways, and the ownership experience, well, hopefully it's a pretty promising one. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that this is the best choice you can make if you're looking for a plug-in hybrid SUV and you want to do so with a realistic budget. This stacks up so well. If you don't need or want all-wheel drive, that's totally fine. The entry-level version, essential model, is an absolutely compelling choice in the Australian market for a plug-in hybrid. Tell me what you think about it in the comments section below. Would you go for the all-wheel drive, the front-wheel drive, or something completely different? I'd love to hear from you. If you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me a lot to grow this channel and grow this community. Thank you for joining along. I'll see you when I see you.